File 002, the Ramshackle House. Begin entry, location, Meriton Hollow, outskirts of Boston. There's a difference between research and reconnaissance, between reading about haunted structures and stepping into one, alone, with only a lantern and a loose mandate. I've traveled before. Field studies, academic conferences, even the occasional uncooperative ruin. But nothing quite like this. This is sleuthing. Marion didn't call it that, of course. She framed it as a favor, a curiosity, a chance to stretch my legs and lend my eye to an old family matter. But I could hear the subtext. This wasn't about the object she hoped I'd find. This was about me. The house she sent me to belonged to one of her grandfather's former colleagues, a man of some mystery. The estate had sat in probate for over a decade, tied up in court thanks to bitter descendants and unclear documentation. A perfect place to bury something important. The house was sealed, neglected, and legally inaccessible, but I went anyway. Because whatever this job was going to become, I needed to understand what I was stepping into. There are places where time doesn't pass so much as collect, layering like dust until the air grows thick with memory. This was one of those places. It sat at the end of a long-forgotten road, hidden behind skeletal trees and a wrought iron gate sagging on one hinge. The windows stared blankly through grime. The porch boards flexed beneath my weight like they hadn't held anyone in years. The front door resisted my presence. The lock yielded, but the wood groaned as though the very frame remembered protest. Inside, the light from my lantern rolled over dust-heavy furniture, draped in yellowing sheets. They stood like ghosts in mourning, a theater of once important things, forgotten mid-performance. The silence had weight, not emptiness, but listening. I moved room to room with deliberate steps, notebook in one hand, the other brushing surfaces, as if contact might conjure insight. Portraits hung crooked on the walls, some faces obscured by mold or time. One, oddly intact, depicted a woman in profile, her expression unreadable, beneath a veil of cracking varnish. I passed her twice before realizing the frame was subtly misaligned each time. I left it alone. The parlor held a piano under a fitted canvas. The dust on top was undisturbed except for a single line, as if someone had dragged a fingertip through it recently. I lifted the cover. All the keys were black. Upstairs, the bedrooms were time capsules. Beds still made, closets still filled. The air was thicker there, warmer somehow, as if grief had once lived here and never fully departed. I entered a narrow room at the far end of the hall. A vanity stood in the corner, mirror tilted forward. I didn't approach it at first. My eyes caught something just past its frame, a shimmer, a trick of light. When I finally stepped close enough to look, the mirror showed the room behind me, but something was off. The door appeared shut in the reflection, though I had left it open. And there, behind the sheets, was a second figure. It wasn't there when I turned. I backed away, slower than I meant to. My foot caught the edge of the rug, and I stumbled, catching myself awkwardly against the vanity. "Smooth, Adrian," I muttered. Grace under pressure. I told myself it was the light. Trick of glass and dust. I told myself that twice. It wasn't until late in the search, after nearly 4 hours of combing the place, that I noticed the draft. In the second-floor study, the far wall was colder than the others. Bookshelves lined the plaster, but the measurements didn't quite add up. I knocked gently along the wood and heard the hollow sound of deception. A notch behind a row of almanacs revealed a small latch. I hesitated, then I pulled. The door swung inward, revealing a narrow stairwell down, unlit, unfinished, and absent from any blueprint. The air changed, older, Deader. I descended. The hidden chamber was small. A desk sat collapsed under the weight of its own decay. Shelves clung to the walls like ribs, many buckled, some empty. A single oil lamp rested on the floor, long dried. But it wasn't the sight that gave me pause. It was the feeling that I had crossed some threshold, that this room wasn't secret. It was sealed. Near the corner, beneath splintered wood, I found a journal, half consumed by rot and blackened at the edges by what looked like fire. The spine bore no insignia, but its contents were legible in parts. The entries weren't dated, but they chronicled unrest among a small group. Paranoia. Whispers of one member breaking protocol, feeding information to an outside faction. The word traitor appeared several times, always underlined, and then a fragment. The jewel responds to intent. Once embedded, it burns through falsehood. That is why they fear it. I turned the page, but it disintegrated in my hand. I nearly missed the jewel. It had fallen between the floorboards beneath the ruined desk. The glint caught my lantern's light, a dull, heatless glow. Oval cut, faintly orange. It matched the one set into the cover of the strange journal. I returned to Marion, the one that didn't seem to age. When I picked it up, the jewel pulsed faintly in my palm. Once, then again. I don't know if it was my heartbeat or something else. My fingers trembled. I slipped it into my coat and stood still for a long time. Something creaked behind me. Now would be an excellent time for this to all be a misunderstanding, I whispered. I didn't check. I made my way back through the house without incident, until I passed the vanity again. This time, the mirror was uncovered. I hadn't left it that way. The reflection showed the hallway, and behind me at the top of the stairs, the woman from the portrait stood watching. Her face was clearer than it had been in oil and canvas, aged, solemn, expectant. I turned. No one. The mirror cracked from corner to corner as I watched. I didn't find what Marion sent me for, not exactly. But I returned with more than I expected. The jewel. And the journal, fragmented though it was, revealed something deeper than any catalogued artifact. Dissent. There had been rot inside whatever quiet society these people belonged to. A war behind closed doors. When I placed the jewel on the table between us, Marion didn't ask what I saw or where I found it. She didn't need to. Her eyes lingered on it longer than her fingers did, and then she nodded. Good work, Dr. Thorne. It wasn't praise, it was permission. I thought I was doing her a favor. Retrieving something half forgotten. A footnote. But I broke into private property. I encountered something that didn't want to be disturbed, and I brought it back. I looked her in the eye. Mrs. Bellamy, before we go any further, I need to know what exactly it is you're involving me in. She didn't answer, not with words. She just smiled. And in that silence, I understood. Whatever lies behind these tasks, these places, these rules, it saw me, it measured me. And apparently, I passed. End entry. Location: my apartment, Charleston, South Carolina. Sleep has refused me tonight. The apartment is silent, save for the low hum of the fridge and the occasional whisper of wind against the window panes. I've poured myself a drink I don't remember choosing, something peaty and sharp that settles behind my ribs like a second heartbeat. I keep thinking about what she said. After the house, Mrs. Bellamy was measured, polite, but not evasive. She spoke of her grandfather and the work he once guided. A society older than memory, she said. One built to guard what couldn't or shouldn't be forgotten. She didn't give it a name at first. Only later, almost offhandedly, did she call it the Archive. There was reverence in the way she said it. Not pride, not fear. Something else. She told me there were others, that I'd barely scratched the surface, that the house wasn't a test of courage, but of discretion. I nodded, trying to mask the unease in my chest. I'd broken into a stranger's home, stared down something I couldn't explain, and she looked at me like I'd passed. I didn't notice the ring on her finger until I was halfway to the door. A dark band of metal inlaid with 5 pale stones, faintly luminous under the lamplight. They matched the jewel I brought back, down to the shimmer. One of them pulsed once, subtly, as if acknowledging its twin. She said I'd done well, that the next step wouldn't involve trespassing, but trust. She would show me the Archive, soon.